quoted the New York Times reading some of the work of Tom Friedman. As I understand his point, that I think he agrees with you as well, that we're talking about small minorities who are doing things that frighten majorities who don't understand. But I think it's Friedman's point is that there's at least a perception of silence from the Muslim community that's perceived by others as acceptance, and that the Christians, the Jews, the Hindus will never be able to deal with extremists outside of their own cultures and religions. Can you talk about, as a Muslim, what can be done to try to deal with the extremism and sort of replace it with education and understanding?
So the question of extremism is, in the Muslim world, a question that I've had a lot of opportunities to debate and dialogue with communities there when I travel. A lot of it, if you look at it, is individuals who are either not happy with their government system, the dictatorial regimes that, or the monarchies that we have in the Muslim world, the aristocratic governments that we have in the Muslim world, and that have marginalized certain communities in their own countries and perhaps deprived certain communities of the day-to-day privileges that everyone else enjoys in the country. So this also has driven some individuals towards extremism. It certainly is there and needs to be addressed for sure. But unfortunately, one way of addressing that is a world order where the countries that champion human rights, such as the United States, Britain, European countries, or other countries in the Muslim world also, that, this support of aristocratic governments, because if you talk to Muslims in these countries and you ask them, what is the one thing that you would like to see done or change, they will tell you, I would like to see the countries of the West stop their support to a government that oppresses me as an individual, and a government that denies me my basic human rights. But if you look at it, it's very intricate, because it all goes back to allies and foreign policy and who are these at one time. One time Iran was our ally, now it's not. During the time the Shah was, and so there's a lot of switching, and so it sends wrong messages. But in the end, the likes of Hosni Mubarak was been in power 25 years plus, right? And you'll find individuals like Ali al-Saleh in Yemen, who's been in power close to 30 years. And the country is going down the drain, but still, we're partnering with the same individuals, the same leaders, the same governments in this campaign of anti-terrorism, because we need an ally to stay, on board with us, fight terrorism, who in the end just oppress that citizen of that country and deny them their basic human rights, whether it is jobs and employment and so on. And literally it has driven certain less privileged and less fortunate communities to be even more marginalized. It is from these communities that we see examples of individuals emerging who are probably more extreme and more radical and so on. So I think one way of doing that is that, like Edward Said, who the scholar from Columbia who passed a few years back, I liked a lot of his works because he looked into this in detail. And he argued that the relationship between Western countries and that of the Muslim world has to be a positive engagement to enhance and improve education, exchange of ideas, intellectual thought, economic development, empowering of the youth there, and encouraging those voices of democracy really to emerge from these countries to bring about change that will be genuine instead of going with the status quo, which is most of the time what happens. And in the end, we only amplify and reiterate the same styles of governments which have not benefited us at all and have only costed us. They've only been more damaging to us. Yeah, so it's, I understand that's a whole lecture of its own, but really it's is what the Muslim world is saying. If you go to these coffee shops in Egypt and other places, this is what people talk about. I got into a taxi and we're going from the hotel in Cairo to the airport. So I asked the guy in Arabic, I said, so how are things going? How's the economy doing? How's the government? Oh my God, he took me. I didn't speak a word after that because he was complaining from there on to the airport. He said, who raises taxes 200%? Right? Who raises taxes 200%? I'm sure if it happened in the United States, that would there'd be a war, a civil war going on suddenly, right? And so he was complaining about the realities of their life there, that there's so much of that kind of stuff that is going on, and that we're removed from those realities when we're here. We live in a country that is so privileged, and we don't see that. And the political agenda of the Western democratic world is different, really. It is not really bringing about genuine changes from within and encouraging those voices of democracy in the Muslim world. Instead, it is only going on with the aristocracy that we see and the autocracy that we see. If it wasn't Sadat, it is Hosni Mubarak. If it's Hosni Mubarak, if it's not Hafiz Assad, it is Bashir Assad now. And it just continues on like that. So at some point, I think we need to take a closer look at all this. And I think with the Obama administration, there's some attempts to do that, and I think that's good. There's some good attempts to do that, and I hope that will continue to grow in that direction. We'll make his last question.
I have a question.
No, he has a hand before you.
I had a question regarding extremism, particularly with Al-Qaeda. When, jihad was addressed earlier, they're always talking about waging jihad, but not only, from my understanding anyway, they call killing Westerners and other leaders and whatnot, but in their frame, their ideology, other groups of Muslims fall under that category of unbeliever, like the Nazi regime, and stuff like that. But also like other Shias around the world or Sunnis that don't agree with their ideologies.
So if you look at how this particular group evolved in its statements about jihad and who they are fighting, you'll find that it was not a jihad against Westerners initially. It was a jihad that the Muslim holy lands should be freed from foreign occupation or from foreign presence. Okay? So that was the initial attempt. But if you look at situation evolved eventually. So they, in losing that ground and being kicked out of his homeland, Saudi Arabia and so on, the theme changed eventually to, but how can we call Muslims throughout the entire globe to identify with our mission and purpose? So they changed the ideology from, no, it's not about Muslim land, the Muslim holy lands, which is really Saudi Arabia at that time, Makkah and Medina, and so on. No, we are fighting Westerners. We're fighting, the disbelievers in the Western world and so on. So John Esposito, a scholar on Christian Islamic relations, articulated this path that Al-Qaeda took. And there's an interesting writing about this, that how the theme changed with time. And even those videos that were released, that were featured on CNN and what it was calling for, if you look at the earlier ones and the ones that came 6 years later or 8 years later, it's a totally different message. It was small scale, and then he was taking it out now the entire Muslim population. So anyway, thank you for your question. I turn it over to you.
Due to time, I think we're going to have to end it. Thank you, Captain Cox. Thank you, Professor bin Hassan. Thank you all for If you can put your evaluations on that back table before you guys leave, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.